Welcome, everyone. I am Enrique Acosta Gonzales, and I am joined by Ashkan Tashvir. And in this episode, we will be speaking about something that I think is very important, and I'm so glad we're talking about it, which is the cost of blind spots and inauthenticities. And I'm sure that the audience will have identified some things immediately in their mind along the lines of the topic covered.
Yeah, so the topic for today, cost of blind spots and inauthenticity. So soon, I think we'll define what we mean by these two. Um, but before that, like, let me ask you, Enrique, in the scope of leadership, which is basically the theme for this series of videos that we're creating. So what does it land to you? Like when we say blind spot and inauthenticities.
Yeah, those are two very important subjects in a leadership role and a leadership life. So, blind
Mm,
spots, areas in your life where you think it going one way and it's actually something else. And you are
mm-hmm,
void of the realization, sometimes what we call awareness of the fact that that is a thing that is holding you back from ultimate progress and success. So those blind spots, which are funny because they're blind for us, but the rest of our team or the organization sees it clearly that we can't see it. And so it takes a little
mm,
feedback from the folks, and you being able to not only accept that feedback, but also become aware of the fact that they're there. Inauthenticities are created by blind spots. If you don't know and are not aware that these things
mm,
exist, you'll be living out a thing that is inauthentic. It is not
yeah,
you. It's a persona. It's something that you've made up because of the way you think. And so, like I said, very important subjects in the life of a leader.
yeah, yeah. So, so when we say blind spot, as the name suggests, it's like the spots that we're blind to, we don't see them. Oh, sometimes we're genuinely oblivious to these areas. Like we don't see them, yeah, because there's this limitation to our perceptual structure. Like sometimes we cannot see um, something that is so apparent, something that is so close to our eyes, and ironically, sometimes because of that closeness, actually we don't see it. Now, there are times that we're not genuinely oblivious, but we ignore. Hence, we call it ignorance. Yeah, we deliberately ignore. Now, when I say deliberately, sometimes it's not very conscious. Yeah, so sometimes it's unconscious, but still, um, uh, we can bring our attention to them. So it's like we are ignoring them. Now, there's a cost associated to these blind spots and not knowings or in the areas that we are ignoring. And we see that a lot in multiple different contexts in our lives. But particularly when you're a leader, then your blind spot is going to have perhaps more cost in a way, or a broader scope. It's going to impact more people. It's going to be amplified because you're not only making decisions for yourself, but also you're making decisions that can impact others. Let's say, for example, if you are a prime minister or president of a country, as a decision maker at that level, or members of parliaments, like basically the policies that are going to be made or regulations is going to literally impact everyone's um, experience of life. We can put it that way. So, well, when we say inauthenticities, as you touched on it, we're talking about incongruences. We're talking about um, the conception that we have of various different fragments of reality that are not congruent, that are not authentic. We may have views around like marriage, God, um, money, taxation, asset, liability, and so many different things. Qualities like responsibility, autonomy, authenticity itself. So we may have inauthenticities. Our understanding of these, like these various ideas, concepts, um, or fragments of reality, are not as congruent as they could be. So that is going to also have an impact on our decisions and the behavior that we manifest at the end of the day. And to a great degree, they're going to determine the either the consequences we're going to face and we need to respond, or the results and outcome that we can generate. So I think that we've created the scene. So we know now what we're talking about when we say blind spot, and when we're talking about inauthenticities. And obviously, like the cost is quite clear. Yeah. So we pay the price. There's cost to these blind spots and inauthenticity that basically we're going to discuss today. So how about from here, Enrique, we make it a bit more tangible, like bringing examples. Like what comes to your mind when we're talking about blind spots? Do you have any story you want to share? Yeah.
Yeah, and I would love to share somebody else's toil
Mm,
with blind spot, but I'll share mine. I was at a middle manager position, and I was in charge of a group of people, and
mm,
there was customs and ceremonies that we, kind of we take partake of, and one of those was typically in advancements. You give awards and things like that. This
mm.
particular individual wanted to celebrate their final day in service, right? Which is not something that we celebrate. We normally just say, thank you for your service. They either get an award or whatever, and then they move on to the next spot or outside of the military. But um, I didn't allow for that to happen. I didn't, and because I was following the normal guidelines and rules.
Yeah.
And what I did not see was that this person just wanted to celebrate the fact that they had served.
Yeah.
And until this day, you talk about far-reaching implications and consequences and pain and all the things that come with those type of decisions. What
Yeah.
I thought that I was doing within regulations and guidelines turned out to
Yeah.
be one of the worst times for that individual, and they left
Yeah.
the military with a bad taste in their mouth. When all I had to do was maybe come up with a way where we could do
Yeah.
that and
Yeah.
celebrate that service without having to maybe go against the norms of what we would normally
Hmm.
do. And so, when you talk about pain points and how devastating blind spots can be, that's one that I still feel today.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. See, sometimes these blind spots or inauthenticities are not necessarily linked to only significant matters in life, even the most trivial things in the eyes of some of us. Um, let me tell this story. Like there was a time that I got very intrigued by seeing some aqua spaces, like this kind of an aquarium that you have plants in it, and then you put some fish in it as well, and everything. And I said that okay, so let me start. And I had this vision, immediately, like I wanted to have this big one with all these like plants, and in it, it was very beautiful. So my immediate mm, understanding, my initial conception of that was okay, so it's a tank, and we'll just put these plants in it, and then as far as it receives some sort of care, then it's going to work. And we put some fish in it, yeah. So as simplistic as that, I was looking at it. So that was my initial conception. But then soon, I mean, I started with this little one, with this micro aqua space, and and um, soon enough, I've realized that there's way more to it. It's not just a tank that you just put the water in it. Like if you put the fish in it, which kind of fish is going to be, what kind of plant, how the current is important, the hardness of the water, the pH of the water, the temperature of the water. And then when I started looking into it, in order for that micro, that's a very little one, the micro aqua space to be maintained, then there were so many different variables that needed to be taken into consideration, and you need to keep them in the range. Otherwise, the plant wouldn't survive or grow, or particularly and the fish, what kind of fish and live creatures that you put it in. And then you needed to, like I needed to go through these iterations that I learned how, for example, if you wanted these type of fish, you need to keep the pH in certain methods. You need to have the pump to create the current. You need to have the light to mimic like the UV that they may receive from the sun, all of these things. We needed a timer, we needed something to control the temperature, we needed the heater, we needed to plant and put some plants that they absorb the ammonia that is being generated through the waste that the fish would create, and then that would be consumed with certain type of plants, and all of these things. Yeah, in the beginning, you need to develop certain bacteria in the tank. It's not just like you just put the water in it and then it's going to work, and so much. And particularly, one thing was happening. I was keep putting these fish in, and I was actually consulting with the with a professional as I was going. And then I'm seeing that after a few days, again the fish is dying, and it was very frustrating and very sad. And then I've realized that the pH of the water, while I was keep maintaining that using this Indian almond leaves and all of that, I was checking it and I was seeing that it's keep growing. I mean, I wanted to keep it more acidic, but then it was keep going higher the number. Then I've realized through working with this professional, looking into all the items that I have put there, I've realized that one of these shells that I took from the sea, I mean the shore, and I put it in it, apparently was impacting the water gradually. The pH was going up, and so on. It is very crazy. Now, not going to the rabbit hole with this analogy. The thing I'm trying to say is, in order for us to do a very, very simple thing, or seemingly simple thing, like that aquarium, or for example, planting the strawberries, I had similar experiences with that. So you then need to learn a lot about all of these different variables that you need to maintain them in in an exact way. Otherwise, the effectiveness, the integrity of the system and the effectiveness of the system is going to be impacted. Now, I'm not really sure to what extent our audience is being intrigued with the aquarium or the strawberry example, but I'm pretty sure you can find similar examples in your life, all the way to more significant things like how to get your marriage working or intimate relationships, developing your intimate relationships, or maintaining your finances and generation of wealth and financial well-being in our lives. To what extent you have a good understanding or authentic, valid understanding of how money works, and what, what is asset, what is liability, what is expenses, what is your spending pattern, etc., etc. So that's what we mean by identifying the blind spots and identifying the inauthenticities. Basically, the things that the areas that we are we are either genuinely oblivious to, or we are ignoring, we're neglecting, and the areas that we may think that we know but we have misconception of. our understanding is not authentic, is not valid, it's not accurate. And that's going to cost us. The cost of it in general is lack of integrity of the system we are trying to build, and dysfunction and lack of workability. So, Enrique, like when you hear all these examples that you brought up and I brought up, what do you think? Um, I mean, what do you think the actual cost is at the end of the day
Well,
if we
firstly,
keep
I was
having
in
these kind of
uh,
systems?
yeah, firstly, I was intrigued about how we really try to replicate
Yeah.
nature. Nature
Oh
has
yeah,
it down. we we try to put everything in a box in a bubble and try to make it the same. But we know
yeah,
how many variables that an attempt like that would actually require
yeah,
or have
yeah,
have in those situations. But you also keyed me into. I was in Louisiana once, and literally over there, if you cross the street, you'll be in a different turf, and I was just going visiting, and the street looked the same. It was during the day, and I literally
yeah.
crossed the street into a mess, and something inside of me said, "Turn around, go back where you came from," and then I avoided, thankfully. But literally, I was in a mess. So when you think about life, and you think about blind spots. Every time you take a turn into another journey, you are automatically adding blind spots to that journey because
Mm.
just you just don't know. And as you're
Yeah,
trekking, even if you know you're sure of this trajectory of yourself, you're going to be this and you're going to turn out to be that and this and that and the other. That journey has
mm,
a lot of forks in the road, a lot of variables in the people that are coming in and out of your life, and each one of those peoples, each one of those factors, each one of those variables has the potential of really wreaking havoc or bringing blessings, right? So you have to know
mm,
the difference between those two, but sometimes we don't, and we'll let somebody in that will cause some havoc. But the cost
mm,
can be as low as, yeah, you just didn't make a sale, right? You just didn't
mm.
make a sale, to shutting down your company because you were so blind to
Yeah,
these things, and you missed opportunities and repeated mistakes and things that you just
yeah,
couldn't get away from. You mentioned money,
yeah.
the bad spending of money, the bad investment of money, all these things. And what I really am most afraid of, really, when you talk about those variables, is that I live a life that was never meant for me because
Mm,
of inauthenticity, right? Because
mm,
um, I think myself to be grandeur than what I really am, and all these
yeah,
things that come with that type of lifestyle. But yeah,
yeah,
that can be very costly.
yeah, yeah. No, that's true. Yeah, you mentioned the nature of course, I think the nature gives us some templates, and fortunately, like through scientific endeavors, we can manage to develop relatively authentic and accurate understanding of the material reality. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to metaphysics, when it comes to more abstract ideas, things like commitment and marriage or relationship or trust building, um, it's going to be much harder. Yeah. So I guess it's harder. And because like you can't purely take a kind of an imperialist approach and then gather empirical evidences that you go, okay, so there's an exact science about this. Always for these kind of input or these kind of situations, there's always that kind of output. And so it's not function, it's not something that um like always mathematically you're going to come up with its formula and get it right, you know. So and sometimes we do have that kind of expectation, but having a healthier relationship with responsibility and autonomy, then we can immediately see that, oh, you're not the one who can impose your will over all of these things out there. There are other wills and volition, and particularly there's this will imposed by you by existence itself, and it manifests itself in multiplicity of laws, some physical laws and then some metaphysical laws, and the idea is if if one's strategy is thrive, yeah, is thrive, is to make things work, if is to make progress. I think one of the best approaches would be going, okay, so, like I see this blurry but clear enough picture. That's what I mean. You mentioned, like when you jump into any new things, when you step in any unexplored territory, you dare, you're daring enough to step into an unexplored, unknown territory. Then you're going to be dealing with lots of new. You're going to deal with lots of uncertainties, and you're going to risk being a fool. You're going to risk being an amateur, a beginner whose conception of all things related to that activity, that hobby, that career, that whatever it is not really mature. And sometimes we find it quite hard to be with that, but there's no other way. So, like we don't come to life with an instruction manual. Um, but at the same time, life sometimes even harshly demands us to know stuff and to know them well, to have authentic awareness around many of these things that we don't know, and then some of them are quite life threatening, or they can lead us to anxieties and depression. But so that's what it is. So the cost, I think, the actual cost is, yes, we talked about lack of integrity. We talked about lack of workability or dysfunction. But the ultimate cost is um, you and your unique experience of life. So there's this limited time that we're here. And if we don't manage to take this approach I just mentioned, that, okay, so we have this clear enough picture, and then we just jump in and with courage. But then actively, we need to develop a more congruent, authentic conception of various different parts. And as we meet new people, as we understand, we encounter new ideas, etc., we go, okay, is there any room for this person or for this idea or for this whatever it is, into this big picture that I'm actually trying to fulfill, this vision that I have for my life. And going along that, then you're going to create your very unique experience of life. It's a combination of all of these little decisions, all the aggregation of all these little seemingly insignificant at a time decisions that you've made, but then they're going to determine in good part the outcome or the consequences that you're going to be dealing with. Now, this is like in general in life, and um, and I don't think there's any other way to go about it really. Yeah, I mean, we can study things before we jump in as much as possible, but at the end of the day, that's how it works. Now, that unique experience of life, Martin Heidegger, the German philosopher, calls it Dasein. So you are responsible and autonomous to a good degree to actually create that for yourself. And in part, when we talk about authenticity, apart from having valid understanding of different parts of the reality, is this very emphasis that um, many great philosophers, other philosophers like Nietzsche and Heidegger, they talked about, which is to transcend beyond conformity. And and that's the thing. Like if you don't have that situational awareness, if you don't have that self-awareness, if you're not choosing to live the life of authenticity beyond the shallow notion of that, deeply, like knowing that there is valid or invalid, um, I mean, it's a spectrum, sometimes not binary, understanding of things. And if you're not committed to not be lenient and fickle with the views and opinions that you shape, then you're in trouble and it's going to cost you. It's going to cost your life. It's going to cost you your unique experience of life and the integrity and the effectiveness of your decisions. And so then you're going to go, yeah, I mean, I'm going to go beyond the conformity. I don't want to let just that societal pressure or the external forces lead me or impose certain things on me, and I'm going to limit my experience of life to their standard. There's this concept that Kant, the German philosopher, brings up. It says "das man." It's like being one of the crowd in a way, just being standardized to this and conforming to whatever it's a norm, and therefore then you lose um, your identity as an individual. You lose the opportunity to actually develop your preferences around your identity, etc., etc., and be I mean, in manifesting the true authentic um, projecting the true authentic manifestation of who and how you are. So and then that can limit the possibility or probability of you being able to be a unique contribution to humanity. So that's basically how I see it. But let me ask you this question. So now, having said all of these things, partly philosophical, partly like in general in life, bringing it back to the context of our conversation in leadership space, yeah, how do you think that that would reflect, Enrique, in the leadership space?
Yeah, well, inauthenticity, you'll find that that will cause a lot of confusion in terms of the people
Mm,
who follow you because they can see that you have these blind spots and they can see that you're trying to do what you think is best, but without feedback or acceptance of feedback. Let's just say feedback is what you expect from people. We say, "Oh yeah, no, no.
mm,
If I'm doing something wrong, hey, by all means, tell me. I'll try to correct and address those things." But those things come up, and you're like, "No, that's impossible. That's not how I see things." And
yeah,
and what you do is you're going to cost, in terms of cost within your organization, you're talking
yeah,
about fear. The people, not
mm,
only from your perspective, but from the people. How is this person
yeah,
going to lead me now if they won't even
yeah,
accept the truth, or at least how we see it or our perspective? There's going to be consequences of loss of trust. You're going to strange those relationships in leadership and in companies, and something that you can't get back. And we all know as leaders, one of the most
mm,
precious things we have is the trust of our people to be able to make good decisions or
mm,
decisions that favor the whole and also
yeah,
lead them to the next level, wherever that level may be. But if you're straining
yeah,
relationships or you losing that trust level or that trust within your group,
yeah,
what do you have as a leader? And so those are
yeah,
consequences from living this inauthentic life, not really bringing in all of those viewpoints from people that can help you. And
yeah,
I've seen many of leadership people or people in leadership positions waste away or get passed over because
yeah,
they are so, I would say, enamored with their blind
yeah.
spots, because they feel that that's what they're wanting to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that this, I mean, in all eras, like we're going to have things like this, but there are like movement trends and external forces trying to basically influence the way that leaders would run their businesses and everything. It's also important to um, be quite cautious of like what sort of external influence you let impact the culture of your organization or not. And then that's like, again, like that has to do with the authenticity and being able to also predict the consequences that some of those decisions of letting the culture of your organization being influenced severely by some of these external forces would be. Now that we discussed these, I think let's go to the last part of the conversation. Now, okay, so we talked about blind spots, we talked about inauthenticities and the cost of them, how to avoid them, or is it like, is it possible to avoid them or not? And then how to partly avoid them or minimize these blind spots. And the second question is, then when we identify these blind spots, then what to do? What would you say, Enrique?
Yeah, so blind spots, we've already defined them, and the counter to that is awareness, right? And
Yeah.
so when we talk about awareness as a whole or self awareness, is awareness, and you as a leader, as someone leading others, or maybe a head of an organization, you have to think about how much of that awareness do you currently have. And if you are
Mm,
not lending yourself to opening up your aperture to say, okay, let me seek diverse feedback, let me see what the people say. You know, when people say, "Oh, you're a good leader," I said, "No, ask them." If you
mm,
ask them if I'm a good leader, and they'll tell you. I don't have to tell you anything because they will. And so when you're
yeah.
talking about uh, getting diverse feedback or engaging in reflective, let's say, practices, something where we could say, hey, let's sit down, let's do a scrub down of that procedure. How did we do? And more importantly, how do you think I led you through that evolution?
Mm,
Did I make some of the good choices, or what where did I go wrong? Maybe I could have done something different. Maybe it wasn't wrong. It was just not the right decision for that situation. And so
yeah.
once you start cultivating that type of environment as a leader, coupled along with your own awareness of who and what you are, I think you can cultivate a very authentic and a very thriving uh, environment
Mm,
when you talk about those things. So I think
yeah.
increasing self awareness is the key to moving on to
Mm,
the next level.
yeah. Yeah. I would even zoom out. I mean, go broader. Like, I mean, so one thing, like we have this kind of an inclination, uh, a lot of times that we just want to sort it out ourselves. We just want to be the one who um, fix the problems and so on. And in a way that if we can, then there's a kind of a humiliation or shame associated with it, as if like there's this kind of presumption that like you should be able to understand things. How come you didn't understand? You know, something like that. But one very very important thing is that actually tapping into other people's knowledge and resources. Sometimes we, I mean, and obviously, like any of these things that we're talking from here, as this antidote to the blind spots or inauthenticities, as well as like when you identify them, what to do about it, how to address them, it requires a tremendous amount of openness and vulnerability, and we discussed that a lot in the other videos that we've created in this series. So assuming that you're vulnerable to the point that not only you're okay if your attention is being brought to your blind spot and inauthenticities and misconceptions, invalid understanding of different things, but also you're thrilled when your attention is being brought to them. So that's a very important thing, and that's something that, to my experience, many cannot relate to. That go, what? You're talking about my faults and my shortcomings and my weaknesses, and then you're saying I should be proud of them or I should be like thrilled? Oh yes. First of all, I don't use the language of fault and blame and I don't know like weakness or it's not about that. It's about this thing that you're on a journey and your ultimate goal is to make something happen and you want to be result oriented. You want to increase the probability of you hitting your target, increasing the probability of fulfilling your the intentions you so care about. If that's the goal, and not you're just like massaging your own ego or other purposes, if you're genuine and authentic with your care, um, for increasing the probability of fulfilling your intentions, then yes, you're going to be thrilled when your attention is being brought to some of these blind spots and inauthenticities by just reading lots of books, being studious, like reading other people's, particularly the experts, um, opinions on matters uh, that are related, are relevant to what you want to achieve. Like you want to generate wealth, you want to understand investment, you want to understand finances, you want to understand mm, establishing decent working relationships with other people, because you're not going to be able to do it alone. Um, as an example, like you need to hire people, you need to fire people sometimes, you need to build partnerships with suppliers, with, I mean, commercial partners. You need to liaise things with government services. You need to basically work with other people. You need to build your brand. You need to communicate what's there that you have built and what value you need to generate trust. All of these things. Let's say you need to um, be good at many of these things and work with lots of people, etc., etc., and develop your conceptions and then practice and become better and better in many of these things in order for you to generate wealth. That's just one example. So, um, bringing that vulnerability and openness, tapping into other people's knowledge and resources, and not leaving yourself to your own devices. Yes, being thrilled when your attention is being brought to these blind spot and inauthenticities through having conversations with others, the experts, working with coaches, working with consultants, working with advisors, um, um, reading lots of books, um, and like after these initial receptions and conception of various different things that are relevant to what you want to achieve, then daring enough to be courageous and then put it in practice, and then forgive yourself with the mistakes that definitely you're going to make and everything, and then keep reiterating, so that then you gain a higher degree of effectiveness. And that's exactly what I discuss in the being framework, in being and human being books, in transformation methodology. We talk about this whole cycle around, um, from reception to conception, and making sense of things, and then application and execution in an iterative manner, so that you can generate gradually and progressively higher degree of effectiveness. But yeah, so I think these are the things that I would have to say, uh, as what to do to identify these blind spots, inauthenticities, and then once you identify them immediately, because you know that there's consequences, you know that it's costing you, just immediately with responsibility and empowerment, addressing them and leveraging. Again, I would like to re-emphasize, leveraging other people's knowledge and resources. Um, what do you have to say as a final thing on top of that, Enrique, so that we wrap this session up?
What you just covered is wonderful, and I encourage all the leaders, all those that are looking into leadership, all those that are currently in charge of organizations and businesses to employ these things. See which one of those you're easily to put into play, and some that maybe you'll have a little work to do. But always remember, this journey of leadership, you're not alone. Yeah, it's not a
Hmm.
one man show, one lady show. This is a journey that we all take together, because believe it or not, any ripple effects that you caused in our ocean, we're all going to feel. So, by all means, seek out those that can help you through that journey and get there faster.
Hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for being with us. I think that it was a wonderful discussion. I enjoyed it myself. Um, Enrique, thank you. Thank you very much for being with me in this episode, like the others. And I think that's the end of this episode. See you soon.